Hello everyone, Greg Goff here. Welcome to the first installation of my blog, The Master's Coin video blog series. I'm believing that you had a fantastic start to your new year, and I'm believing that God keep and preserve us this entire 365 days of 2014. I was just thinking about my Twitter timeline versus my Facebook timeline. How Twitter represents the world and the goings on in the world, and Facebook represents me, my friends, and my friends' friends. And I began to notice how there's a lot of topics or conversation going on in the world that don't never touch my Facebook timeline. And I have like all these friends from all around the world, right? So I think that's amazing. What I want to talk about today is the revival that's taking place in the Catholic Church, which was God initiated it through Pope Francis. Now, I know a lot of people won't be able to identify with that. They, not feeling the Catholic Church. But first of all, I want to say that 32% of people who identify themselves as Catholics were going to Mass on a regular basis. Since Pope Francis, the number has moved to 65% of people who identify themselves as Catholics go to church on a regular basis. Now, the numbers alone talk revival. That's a resurgence, all right? And we know from the biblical terminology of revival is when the heart of the children are turned back to the fathers. That's when people begin to come back to God, or to come to God. These are the initial markings of a revival. And so we're seeing that in the Catholic Church. But it may be difficult to identify, accept, or acknowledge because of our preconceived notions and prejudices about the Catholic Church. You know how they pray to Mary, idol worship, how they worship the priestly clothing, or how they worship the bones of dead saints, or the controversies with the priests and boys, the controversy with the nuns, and these fetuses are found because of these abortions that have taken place. Also, for the last 100 years, we've been taught that it was the Catholic Church would be the great dragon taught about in the book of Revelations, and how even the Antichrist may come out of the Catholic Church himself. So we've been bombarded with all of this imagery and all of these teachings, and so now when we look at the Catholic Church, that gets in our way from being able to see God moving in the midst of them. But really, what goes on there is no different than what goes on in a lot of other churches. When doctrine goes over the top, or people get carried away with stuff, there's a lot of stuff going on in our Christian churches that are just as bad as worshiping Mary. But we'll talk about that later on down the line. This Pope here, he has the heart of Christ. As a matter of fact, the Pope is the vicar of Christ, meaning that he is Christ's legal representative, or supposed to be Christ's legal representative here on the planet Earth, right? And so when we look at the Pope, we know the Pope in all of his glory, majesty, his mansion, his clothes, his security, and all this kind of stuff. Well, like Jesus, who set his glory aside to be robed in the likeness of man, the Pope set all that papal glory aside, all right? And instead of having that European designer clothes that are designed specifically for the Pope, on down to the red Prada slippers, he has rejected all that for the simplicity of the garments that he's always worn. And not only that, this Pope sneaks out at night to go minister to the people, to the homeless, to the broken, to the poor. On Christmas, he gave away thousands of phone cards and even trains and bus tickets for people to be able to connect with their loved ones, because family is important to this Pope, just as family is important to God. Not only that, but this Pope has spoken out against capitalism and how this materialistic society that we live in is killing poor people. And the same message that Jesus gave. It's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than a rich person to make it into heaven, because a rich person trusts in his riches more than they trust in Christ. And the Pope has spoken out so much that has gotten the religious right-wing media complex folks like Hannity, Sean Hannity, and Glenn Beck, Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, Laura Ingraham, Ann Coulter, and all those people, Sarah Palin, to speak negatively against the Pope. Because although the people I've named call themselves Christians, their Christian message and ideology is completely different from the Christ and the message of Christ in the Bible. You know, it's even to the point, and you know the Pope must be putting in work, because it's been said that even the mafia has a hit out on him, because all of what we know about Catholicism, the Pope is rejecting it. There was a cardinal who spent like several $1 million on upgrading the place he lived. The Pope got rid of him. The Pope is just changing the structure. Although the doctrines are still the same, but the Pope is changing the structure to where the people and the needs of the people are the focus. Just as with Jesus and the needs of the people where Jesus is focused. I'm excited about the Pope. I'm excited about seeing a revival in the Catholic Church. And I know that in our churches, the Protestant churches, the Apostolic, the Holiness, the Pentecostal, the Baptist, the Methodist, the AME, the Episcopalian churches, you know, that we go to, we kind of have this limited perception of God according to our church experience, which does not allow us to see God move on a global setting. So I'm just hoping that, you know, this will be some food for thought, and maybe that it will allow you to see God a little bit differently. And so until the next time, God bless.